If you're ready to get back to work or are just thinking of changing careers, 97.3 ESPN's virtual job fair is the place to start. Just go to 973ESPN.com and click on the virtual job fair. You'll find exciting opportunities from a variety of local businesses, including
Hard Rock Hotel and Casino,
Town Square Media in South Jersey, Resorts Casino Hotel,
Cape May Lewis Ferry,
Maurice Piers in Wildwood.
Take the first step to a brighter future today. Visit 973ESPN.com.
South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
I am the voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of CLC. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show as we are in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Matt Black Kia, we'll get you approved today. Matt Black Kia in the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Sixers lost last night, a game that they should have won. We're going to get into that today. Bryan Toporek, the NBA podcast co-host, Forbes Sports NBA writer, will join us coming up at 6:20 to get more into the NBA postseason. Obviously, the Bucks and the Nets back in action tonight. It looks like James Harden is going to play, barring any pregame setbacks. So it'll be Durant and Harden out there versus the Bucks with the series tied 2-2. You can hear all the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN starting at 8 o'clock tonight on ESPN Radio. Last night's game was something that I hoped I would never see. But it was something that I think it was necessary for all of us to see. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that there would be a situation where I would walk away from a Sixers game with this Sixers team, with this lineup, with this this roster, this rotation, these coaches, these players. Never did I ever think that I would come on here and I would say the Sixers defense choked, and that's why they lost the game. Their defense absolutely disappeared at the end of that game. It just went away. It ran away and hid. Listen, you can blame Embiid's 0 for 12 all you want. You can blame Ben Simmons' lack of assertiveness all you want. You can blame Tobias Harris for not doing more in the fourth quarter all you want. But this team was winning games because they were limiting Trae Young. They were stopping the other team from asserting control on the game. And when John Collins had that first dunk, and you heard on television, Brian Anderson said, Collins came from the rafters. I put my head in my hands and I said, oh no, this game is going the wrong direction now. Because that was the moment I knew this team stopped playing defense. They stopped boxing out. They stopped doing what you have to do to win basketball games. What is the primary prerequisite of winning a basketball game? The primary prerequisite is to outscore the other team. That is your job. And the best way to guarantee that you outscore the other team is to make sure that the other team is never in a position to outscore you. I am not going to sit here and let go of this. It was absolutely disgusting to me how this team just decided to stop playing defense last night. This roster is literally filled with dudes whose either best or second best skill set is on the defensive end of the court. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, George Hill, Matisse Thybulle. What are these guys best at? Or their second best thing is playing defense. I don't care how banged up Embiid's knee is. I don't care how scared Ben Simmons is of free throws. You don't stop playing the game because of those things. It is absolutely perplexing to me what I saw last night. And yes, we can blame the lack of defense on the absence of Danny Green. We can blame him for that. All right? If Danny Green isn't injured, we can. But the team knew Danny Green wasn't going to be there last night. The team knew for 3 quarters how to win a basketball game without Danny Green. But suddenly in the fourth quarter, when Trae Young starts cooking, when John Collins starts putting back dunks, when Clint Capella is out rebounding almost the entire Sixers team combined, there was nobody who could step up and look somebody else in the eye and be like, hey, we're better than this. Last night, the Sixers were more concerned about the referees than they were about playing defense. And you could tell how mad Doc Rivers was after the game. But the question is, was Doc Rivers mad because he knows his team can be better? Or was he mad because they didn't follow the game plan? Because it was very obvious in game 1 that there was a game plan and the team didn't follow it for the majority of the game. So, let me get this straight. And again, text board is open, 609-403-0973. Let's go 973 ESPN FM or the 973 ESPN mobile app. Josh Hennig here on GameNight. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can comment on the stream as well. Josh Hennig here on 973 ESPN. I think Danny Green was greatly missed last night. I really do. But I also think that Doc Rivers knows, as a former player, how bad of a look it is at the moment in time when anybody on the floor, preferably either Tobias, Ben, or Embiid, should have grabbed their teammates, got them in a huddle during a timeout or an out-of-bounds play, and said, guys, we got to pick up the defense. Guys, we got to get our heads out of the sand. Guys, we got to stop feeling bad for ourselves. We got to go out here and win this game. Nobody did that last night. And it starts to make you wonder, how many times we heard this year from Doc Rivers, from Matisse Thybulle, from Ben Simmons, from other players on the team. Danny Green always knows what to say. Danny Green always knows what we need. Danny Green is a great teammate. He's a leader in the locker room. Well, you were missing him last night. I know Danny Green may frustrate some people out there because he's not a dead-eye three-point shooter and he's not gunning it about 7 to 8 times every game and nailing about 4 or 5 of them every game. But Danny Green brings something to the table that apparently the rest of the team is incapable of doing. Because last night, there was never a point in time where any of those players looked at each other and said, guys, we got to be better. And that to me is embarrassing. And I think that's part of the reason why Doc Rivers was upset. Because when he played basketball, and when he coached the Magic, and when he coached the Celtics, there were dudes on those teams who would get in another guy's face and he'd say, boys, we need to play better. Nobody did that last night. The Sixers could have won the game. The game wasn't out of reach. The Hawks weren't blowing them out. But yet, you got ran all over offensively. And yeah, it was cute that you had still had a shot at the end of the game to tie it and go to overtime. And I'm sure those of you out there who had the over on the game last night were hoping for overtime. Sorry you lost. Wasn't my bad beat. But it wasn't realistic last night. The Hawks shot 36% from the field last night. They took 101 shots. The Atlanta Hawks took 16 more shots than the Sixers and made the same number of field goals in the game last night. They both made 37 field goals. But the Hawks shot about 8% worse from the field. The Hawks shot 10% worse from three. But they won the game. The Sixers out-rebounded them 55-49. Sixers have more blocks. But here's where it gets dicey. The infamous turnovers. Sixers 12, Hawks 4. The Sixers choked in the fourth quarter last night. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win the series. That doesn't mean they can't make this still something moving forward. But my, oh my, oh my. I never thought I would see a team that was built to play defense just stop playing defense. That was a big part of the reason why they lost Game 4 last night. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open as always at 609-403-0973. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We can comment on the stream as well. You know, when I think about the NBA playoffs, and of course we're going to see the Nets versus the Bucks tonight. All the coverage started at 8 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Think about that series. Think about how that series has played out so far. That series has proven that if you just try a little bit harder on defense, you might win the game. The two Bucks wins, okay? They held the Nets under 100 points in the last two games. In the two Nets wins, the Nets scored 115, 125 points. All of a sudden, Milwaukee found their defense at home. The Sixers have been a consistent defensive team all year until last night. They let Trae Young cook them to death. Despite the fact the Hawks were shooting 36% from the field. They were barely making more than a third of their shots last night. A good NBA team makes around 50% of their field goal attempts. You know, when you watch the Nets tonight, or you listen to them right here on 97.3 ESPN, watch the team that shows up and plays fundamental basketball. Watch the team that actually plays some defense. Watch for the team that actually goes out there and wants to win the game. It's as if this team last night, the Sixers, just got to a point and they were just like, we're not playing defense anymore. We're tired of doing that. And that's unacceptable to me. All right, we got to talk more about the NBA coming up next. Bryan Toporek, the NBA podcast co-host. He's also Forbes Sports NBA writer. He'll join us coming up next right here with me, Josh Hennig, on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show and get involved. Just follow 97.3 ESPN so you can watch the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig, the Locker Room with Billy Schweim, and, of course, Sports Bash Saturday as well right here. That's 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
It's Sixers playoff basketball tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McInnes, calling all the exciting Sixers playoff action.
Embiid got the rebound, and he puts it in, and he was fouled by Capella.
It's Sixers Hawks Game 5 tomorrow night. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers playoff basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Black Nissan.
The summertime sale is on at Matt Black Nissan, and the deals are heating up. Put zero down, pay 0% interest for 60 months, or get $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. Plus, we need your trade. Buried in a current loan or lease, Matt Black Nissan wants to get you released so you can drive the all-new loaded SV model 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease just $299 per month with zero security deposit, plus our fast-track checkout. Bring any vehicle to Matt Black Nissan and get top dollar today in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblacknissan.com.
It's on at Matt Black Nissan.
Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand bar. Offers can be combined. 36 month, 10,000 mile 2-year lease. Lease selling price $28,590. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblacknissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 7/5/21. It's on at Matt Black Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As always, you'll get to your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the hour. 609-403-0973 is the text board. You listen to 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. If you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you comment on the stream as well. But right now, joining us on the stream on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline to get more into this conversation about the Sixers, the NBA playoffs, and more. He is back. Bryan Toporek, the co-host of the NBA podcast, joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, how you doing after that debacle last night?
Well, Josh, I just changed the poopy diaper, and that was more enjoyable than watching Game 4 last night.
Wonderful answer. So let me because you were cleaning the diaper and I was ranting and raving, I'll just give you a little bit of a synopsis of what I spent about 15 minutes losing my mind about.
Oh boy.
I never thought in my lifetime, or at least this basketball season, I would come on the radio and I would say about this Sixers team with this roster, with these players, they stopped playing defense last night. They literally just said, we're not going to play defense for the rest of the fourth quarter. And then you have John Collins getting dunks. And then Trae Young is dishing dimes and getting scores and getting floaters. And the Sixers became more interested in arguing with the refs than doing the one thing that got them wins in the last two games, games 2 and 3, which was limiting Trae Young. And at the end of the night, the Hawks still shot 36% from the field, and you still lost because you lost focus on the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find good things from last night. Seth Curry deserves props. That's about it. Otherwise, I mean, I think their shot selection contributed to the defensive struggles as well. Like if you're, you mentioned trying to foul bait. Embiid obviously had, one of his worst playoff games ever, especially in the third quarter, as he misses his first couple mid-range shots. He goes back to the locker room. He said after the game, he didn't feel like he had it. So in the third quarter, you could feel him start to be pressing a little bit more. And, he was trying to take on double and triple teams and draw fouls, and we didn't get calls. He threw his hands up in the air, was slow getting back on defense. And that just leads to a cascading effect where it's like, okay, you missed a shot, but at least you have to play hard on the other end still. It was just an overall complete disaster from a team performance. And honestly, they were lucky to only lose by 3. I mean, you mentioned the Hawks shot 36%. They shot 36% on a number of wide open looks that they just missed last night. You can't expect that to carry on moving forward. So the Sixers really need to tighten up on both ends of the ball if they're going to win the series.
The other thing was that I think that last night we saw the real value of Danny Green, which is no Danny Green meant there was no adult on the court. Remember Brett Bryan used to call the adult in the room Jimmy Butler? Well, there was no adult on the court to grab Ben, to grab Joel, to grab Tobias, or whoever's on the court and be like, guys, wake up. We're playing like garbage. And I've heard so many times throughout the year, Doc Rivers, Matisse Thybulle, Ben Simmons, almost everybody on this team says Danny Green always knows what to say, when to say it, when we need to hear it. And last night, Danny Green wasn't on the court to say what needed to be said, and nobody was there to say, hey, guys, we're playing like garbage. We need to wake up.
Yeah, I'm going to butcher the exact phrasing, but Doc said basically like Danny Green always plays at his own pace. And like when things are getting chaotic and hectic in the playoffs, Danny's just there chilling in like a good way. He's just keeping his composure. It felt like the Sixers last night lost theirs, especially, as Embiid is not getting it going. Like throughout the season, Embiid has bailed them out time and again with his improved mid-range shooting. He didn't have that last night. Seth Curry kind of took over that role for at least part of the game. Like Seth Curry was phenomenal and really bailed them out of a number of bad offensive possessions. But then, Doc was saying after the game, the ball movement just completely stagnated. Like they started the game in hero ball. They had that great stretch in the second quarter where Embiid's, passing out of double teams and trusting his teammates. And then in the third quarter and really the whole second half, it just turned into isolation basketball, and the Sixers don't have the personnel to play that way. Like they need to trust their teammates. They need Joel and Ben to pass out Joel pass out of double teams, Ben drive and kick to open shooters. When that's not happening, you get what we saw last night, which is just a bunch of aimless offensive possessions, and that dovetails into what happens defensively.
By the way, also speaking of Seth Curry, last night was the first game of the regular season of the postseason the Sixers have lost when Seth Curry scores at least 15 points. We were previously 18-0 before last night. So that tells you Seth did his job.
Yeah.
The rest of the team did. And Bryan Toporek joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Toporek on Twitter. The podcast is the NBA podcast. Him and Mort do a great job on the pod. So moving forward, obviously Game 5 is tomorrow night. They gotta do something different. And I'm starting to wonder, maybe Korkmaz was a good idea to start the game, but it seemed like as the game went on, the Hawks found ways to take advantage of him. Matisse Thybulle obviously is not an offensive option. I've heard two people say today that Danny Green is the best of both Korkmaz and Matisse Thybulle on the court. He's an amalgamation. So is the solution going in the next game, find somebody else for those minutes? Maybe minimize Korkmaz's exposure because he played, 25, 26 minutes last night. Limit the exposure of him and maybe find more minutes for, George Hill, Tyrese Maxey maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, as you said, Danny, it's been a tough series for him before the calf injury. I would not say he was playing particularly well, but he also, outside of game one where they foolishly put him on Trae Young, he wasn't killing them. Like, they weren't actively seeking out targeting Danny Green on defense. Korkmaz, on the other hand, when you've got Curry and Korkmaz in the backcourt, that's just too many weak links when you're going against a team with Trae Young and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And Bogdan really seemed to go after Korkmaz a lot last night. So I don't know if, I'm guessing Doc might stick with the same starting five, but maybe Kork's minutes go down if he's not knocking down shots or if they're really starting to go after him defensively. I like the idea conceptually of George Hill playing more with the starters because really that's what they brought him in to be. Hypothetically, if this was like the full-fledged version of George Hill that we haven't really seen except for in fits and starts. But, Daryl Morey right after the trade deadline was saying at the end of the game, when Danny's healthy, we can have 5 two-way guys on the court. We can have our big three. We can have Danny. We can have George. Playoff tested, two-way guys, no weaknesses on either end. Obviously that's not possible now with Danny hurt. And, Kork's going to be a liability on defense. Matisse is going to be a liability on offense. I think George is probably the best two-way option they have at their disposal until Danny returns. So I would like to see more of him, but at the same time, you take him away from that second unit and, they're relying on him a lot to take some of the ball handling pressure off Shake Milton. So there's really no perfect answer here. And I think it speaks to the value of Danny Green to this team, even though, on nights where he's not knocking down a ton of threes, like his stat lines tend to look pedestrian. All the little things he does entry passes last night were an adventure for most of the game. Like just having someone to throw good entry passes. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're playing out of the post as much as the Sixers do, they need that. And they were lacking that last night as well. So I'd like to see George get a little more run, but I just don't think there's a great answer here, unfortunately.
No, there's not. But I just feel like, Doc has a history of not being a slave to certain lineups.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when he was in Boston, there were so many times that he would experiment who the fifth guy was. Because we all knew the four were in Boston. It was KG, it was Paul, it was Ray Allen, it was Rondo. But some nights it was Bryan Scalabrine. And other nights it was Glenn Big Baby Davis, right? Like he was a guy who he was never a slave to a lineup. He did the same thing with the Clippers, same thing in Orlando. And I would like to see Doc not trot Korkmaz back out there. And I almost want to say anybody but Korkmaz, because I just think Korkmaz, he's a bench player. And I don't know if he's a guy you want out there for more than 20 minutes a game, because I think when you take him out of his limited exposure, it hurts you. And for me, like you mentioned, George Hill was brought here for a reason. Heck, you're at home tomorrow night, right? Start Maxey, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Tell Tyrese to go out there and go nuts for 8 minutes and see what happens. Because you know what? Maybe you just need to just go to the poker table and throw a little extra on the bend and just say, what the heck?
Yeah. I mean, I think Doc has had a really good feel for this team for most of the playoffs, like knowing to go to Shake toward the end of game 2 of this series, bringing in Furkan or early in game 3, Tyrese Maxey in game 5 of the Wizards series. I don't want to blame Doc's rotations for why they lost last night. They lost last night because Joel Embiid went.
Brian, the players lost last night.
Yeah,
lose the game.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, all of this fundamentally comes down to Joel Embiid is playing on a torn meniscus. If we see the version that played in the second half last night, if that's the version of Joel Embiid that we get moving forward, the Sixers are not going to advance. Or if they do advance, they're not going to advance past the Eastern Conference Finals. They need the games 1 through 3 Embiid. And that's the question mark that no one's going to have a good answer to until we see what he looks like tomorrow night. He goes back to the locker room in the first half to get treatment. He kind of downplayed it after the game, but I thought, honestly, he gave some pretty alarming answers where, someone asked him about that last layup that he blew. And he's saying, like, normally I'd go up and dunk that and try to get an and one, but I just didn't have lift for obvious reasons. And it was like, that's a alarmingly honest answer for Joel Embiid if we're looking, moving forward at their prospects for the rest of the series.
Well, let's get to Embiid then. Obviously, he's playing hurt. I think we all can see it. I think last night was the most obvious, right? Yeah. Last night was the first time, like he would try to do that fadeaway jumper, but he's not really getting the lift off the right foot, right? He tries to do that one move in the post, and you could tell he's doing it about half speed because maybe he's afraid to plant too hard on the knee. Can the Sixers win with Embiid only being at 50 to 80%?
They can. Their margin for error is a lot less. And, if they're going to only turn the Hawks over 4 times in a game, probably not. Like they need to get back to who they are fundamentally. They are, they built their identity on defense. Even if Embiid is limited offensively, he at least can provide something defensively. I mean, he pulled down 21 rebounds last night. So, you're not going to have the bailout option of Embiid. You're going to need more aggressive Seth Curry, more aggressive Tobias Harris. I'm hesitant to even bring up the next name because that's going to get to a whole other subject, but more aggressive Ben Simmons as well. Like, the rest of his team, he's been lifting this team up on his shoulders the entire season. They're going to have to do the same to him if he's limited in the same way that he was in game 4.
Well, then let's touch on Ben Simmons because you brought the infamous name up. Everyone's losing their mind. Here's my position on Ben Simmons. And if people want to say I'm being dismissive, fine. All right. Here's my position. I don't expect Ben Simmons to be anything that he's not.
Yeah.
Ben Simmons is a guy who plays great defense. He's going to go out there and get you somewhere between 7 and 11 assists a night. He's going to be close to getting a triple-double every night. He's basically a lesser offensive version of Jason Kidd, basically. That's how I look at him. I never expected him to be anything more than that, but because he was drafted number 1 overall, even though in the last 20-plus years, only been 3 number 1 overall picks who have actually done anything legitimate in the league. But still, he's drafted number 1 overall. There's a level of expectations. Bryan, I compare it to see a movie trailer. You think the movie's great. You go to the movie doesn't line up with the trailer. It doesn't mean the movie is bad. It just means your expectations were wrong for that movie. That's what I think of Ben Simmons.
Yeah, like if you're expecting him to be LeBron James 2.0, you're going to be disappointed. He's not going to be the second best player of all time. Sorry, it's just not in the cards. Like there's a range of outcomes between that and he's a total bust and the Sixers need to trade him. And I think, there's that area of gray is probably where we're at. But no, I don't expect Ben Simmons to suddenly score 40 points in Game 5. I think we did see in the second half of Game 3 where they did turn to him more as a scorer. There are ways to get him going, but you're watching like the Bucks game, like Bucks Game 3, I think it was, where Giannis takes 8 threes, and every time he takes one, all of Twitter is like, "Why are you shooting threes? Why are you shooting threes? Just get to the post, play to your strengths." And it's like, well, why are you saying this different for Ben Simmons? Like that Ben Simmons shooting a 3 is not his strength, or shooting a mid-range jumper. Does he need to add those things to his game to give himself a higher ceiling and give the Sixers a higher ceiling? Absolutely. But that shouldn't come off as blasphemous. I mean, you could have said the same thing about Joel Embiid last year. Did he need to become a much better mid-range shooter? Did he need to be able to improve his passing and pass out of the double teams more efficiently? Yes. And he made those improvements, and now he's an MVP candidate. If Ben Simmons improves as a free throw shooter, adds a mid-range jumper, adds a three-point shot at some point in his career, he has the talent defensively. He could be one of the best two-way players in the league. He could get into that MVP conversation. It's just not going to happen overnight, and no one should expect him in this series to all of a sudden start shooting like Seth Curry, for instance.
By the way, I won't let LeBron know you call him the second best player of all time. Okay.
At worst.
Listen, I'm worse than you. I say he's the third best player of all time. So,
oh wow.
Well, because I love to ruin the argument. I'm the jerk who comes in the middle of the Jordan LeBron argument, and I say Kareem's the best, and I ruin the argument for everybody.
There you go. Well, LeBron's still got time. That's the thing. He can still move up a little bit.
I just think it's funny that we see all these commercials now because they're trying to pump up Space Jam 2 coming out.
Yeah.
And the one ESPN related promotional piece is called The Bunny and the Goat. And it's like, I can just see Jordan sitting somewhere with the look he has when he's looking at the iPad from The Last Dance, where he starts just laughing. And that's stupid and just throws the iPad aside. He throws you up being Jordan when he sees that promo.
Yeah, no clutch clients will be siding with the Charlotte Hornets for a while, I think.
Yeah. Bryan Toporek joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Toporek on Twitter. We'd be remiss if we don't touch on the series that's going on tonight in the Eastern Conference. That's the Nets and the Bucks. It's a 2-2 tie series. I think Harden's playing. I'm not really sure. I mean, the way he's going from being out to doubtful to questionable, either he's had super healing abilities or we're not being told something here.
I know after Game 4, Steve Nash was saying Harden's injury and Kyrie's injury are two separate entities, and we are not going to rush back James Harden just because Kyrie is hurt. I would like to believe that, but I would also think if Kyrie Irving is healthy, James Harden is not playing tonight. I think Harden knows really their season is on the line tonight. If they lose this game, they're going to lose 3 straight, go back to Milwaukee for Game 6. I can't imagine Kyrie is playing in 2 days either. So I understand why he's playing. I am super nervous that he is going to aggravate that thing early on and have to leave again, and that's going to be it for him this season. So regardless of what happens in the game itself, I just hope for his sake that he makes it out healthy.
Yeah, because I'm 100% with you. I love you that you said that because at the end of the day, I don't like seeing these players hurt. You know what I mean? I don't like seeing Harden grabbing the back of his leg, Kyrie laying on the ground grabbing his ankle. Like, whether you like or dislike these players, you want to see the best players in the world out there doing their thing, right? So I don't know. I'm worried that he's going to come back and it's going to be the third quarter. He goes for another layup and he pulls up lame again. And, listen, I had said all along that the Nets are a team that, Bryan, I couldn't trust them to be healthy. Doesn't mean I wish them to be unhealthy. Like, those are two separate things for me. So, and I'm just worried that Harden comes back tonight and, all right, so they get hurt again. What if Harden comes back and then tonight Durant gets hurt? Then what?
Oh God, yeah. Well, then the Nets are done. That's what happens. But yeah, I mean, to your credit, you had been hammering that like every time I came on. I was saying like if the Nets are healthy, they're my title favorite, and you were like, are we sure they're going to be healthy the whole playoffs? And as we've seen, I mean, the Kyrie thing. Like I know a lot of people are blaming Adam Silver in the NBA for pushing through this abridged season and not having a ton of the layoff from last season. Like the Kyrie thing was not an overuse injury. It's just a freak injury. He lands on a guy's foot. What are you going to do?
Right.
The soft tissue ones are the ones where you can, that one might be more debatable. But yeah, I mean, like I hope everyone from this point forward in the playoffs, like no more injuries. Let's just turn off the injuries because there have already been way too many. And it's going to be a bummer because at this point, it just feels like whichever team just doesn't have a star player go down, that's who's going to make it to the finals. Or that's who's going to be the NBA champion this year.
Of course, the Nets and Bucks coverage begins at 8 o'clock tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers tomorrow night. Coverage begins at 7:30 here on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, you are the co-host of the NBA podcast. So before I let you go, I know the reports are out there. It looks like Chauncey Billups is probably going to be the next coach of Portland, but I can't stand something else that's going on that Portland did. They interviewed Mike D'Antoni. When are we going to be done interviewing the retreads who have literally done absolutely nothing to qualify them after like Stan Van Gundy got a job in New Orleans over probably 5 people who are all being interviewed right now for jobs who could have had the New Orleans job. But we were convinced that Stan Van Gundy turned into a fundamental basketball team. Their defense was garbage this year. I don't understand. Why is Mike D'Antoni getting more interviews? I don't understand it.
Hey, it's better than Jason Kidd getting more interviews. I'll say that much.
Is it though? Is it better?
Yeah, definitely. For both on and off court reasons, which we could leave it at that. But look, I mean, to your point about Portland, offense was not their problem this year. They were 29th ranked team on defense. So I don't know that Mike D'Antoni fixes that. I guess the counter to the argument of why are we going through all these retreads, a retread has a history, is a known quantity. So you at least know what you are getting out of Mike D'Antoni, where, you can go for an assistant mystery box coach and hope he turns into a Ty Lue or a Nick Nurse or someone like that. But at the same time, it could also turn into a Nate Bjorkgren situation where, the person just wasn't ready for the responsibilities of being a head coach, lacked, from all reports coming out of Indiana, Bjorkgren was a good X's and O's guy, just lacked the people management skills. So, going to a team like Portland in particular, where you've got some veteran guys, you're in a win now window and you're starting to hear that clock tick a little bit on Dame, I can understand not necessarily wanting to go with a first-time coach, but at the same time, I mean, Chauncey, like Ty Lue gave rave reviews about Chauncey recently, and his history as an NBA champion as a point guard, I can also see why Dame would really like to see him as the next coach. So I'm interested. I mean, the big report today, or rumor that's been circulating Twitter today, is that Portland wanted to go after Eric Spoelstra, which I think
I saw
that would be the fun one.
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't hate that, but I just don't see Spoelstra ever leaving Miami. I feel like he's going to be to the Miami Heat what Don Shula was to the Dolphins. Yeah. I feel like Spoelstra is going to be in Miami forever. Pat Riley is going to be dead and gone, and he's going to still be working either the sidelines or the front office in Miami. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Pat retires at 85 years old and Spoelstra does a Brad Stevens down in Miami. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
Yeah, I don't think he's leaving Miami either. But I look, when you have an open search, I mean, the Sixers proved it last year. You might as well shoot for the stars and then settle if you have to. But, sometimes things fall into place for you, such as Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey becoming available.
Well, hopefully Popovich retires soon so Becky Hammon can just be the coach in waiting in San Antonio, because the fact that she's interviewed for 5-6 jobs now.
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, no offense to Pop, I understand that, it's San Antonio. He could do whatever he wants, but there's got to be a part of him that's like, I'm old. Tim Duncan ain't walking through that door.
Yeah.
Tony Parker ain't walking through that door. We can do the Rick Pitino game.
Yeah.
And just be like, you know what? I've had a good run. Becky, how about you take over?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all their veterans are about to walk out the door. Maybe Pop follows them out and, they move into this rebuild with a new coach.
He's Bryan Toporek at B Toporek on Twitter for all of your NBA coverage. The NBA podcast, Bryan Toporek, Morton Jensen, and as all guests, Bryan appeared on the Boardwalk High Hotline. Bryan, great stuff today.
Always happy to come on, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As promised, right next we'll get to your texts at 609-403-0973. And we have comments from Rodney and others over on the YouTube stream as well, with all of your comments coming up next right here on Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, at Josh Hennig on Twitter.
The NBA playoffs continue.
Rolls around and in. Count it. Now those rolls that weren't going for Antetokounmpo early are all going down.
The home team prevails for the fourth straight game as the Bucks tie the series with the Nets at 2 games each. Now we return to Brooklyn. Will the home team roll once again, or will Giannis and the Bucks make it 3 straight? Coverage begins tonight at 8 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
The NBA playoffs exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details. As you know, most car dealers in our area are still having trouble getting cars and charging a lot more for them. But Bennett Chevy isn't like most dealers. We kept what you love, our famous GM supplier employee prices. It's incredible. You pay what our supplier employees pay and not 1 penny more. And Bennett also gives you all the rebates. That's up to 25% off MSRP. 25% off. Plus, we've still got available 0% financing to save you even more. Shopping for pre-owned? Well, Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for trades. So if any old junker is worth at least $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock, think of how much your good trade is worth. And Bennett's now an authorized lease return center for all brands. And with our non-commissioned sales staff paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's no pressure, no hassles. The best prices, low rates, the most for trades. Nobody beats Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Love and Dome, East Coast Roofing and Siding. Trust us with your family and home.
Hey South Jersey, this is Sean Steitler with East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows. With over 40 years in business, East Coast has been providing South Jersey with award-winning work backed by lifetime warranties. Our teams consist of GAF, Master Elite, certified contractors, CertainTeed 5-star contractors, and Provia certified installers. What does this mean for you? Your projects will be handled by well-trained professionals. Trust East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows with your next project. Visit our website at eastcoastroofing.com or call us today for a free consultation at 609-646-1444. Remember, South Jersey, when you call, we'll show up.
East Coast Roofing and Siding. Trust us with your family and home.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
As always, we wrap up the Game Night at 97.3 ESPN. We hear from you guys. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. I will also grab at least one of Rodney's comments over here on the YouTube stream. He always has some good points before we get out of here. But first, to get to the questions that came in, the order they came in. Dan from EHC chimed in a little bit earlier in the show and said, if the Sixers do lose this series, there's an excuse because of the injuries to Embiid and Green. I can't believe, honestly, that Embiid is playing on a meniscus tear. What a gamer. See, here's the thing. I don't know if it's an excuse because I think they should beat the Hawks even if Embiid is healthy or not. I think that Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, the rest of his team is good enough to beat the Hawks, but they got to play better. They got to play fundamental defensive basketball. There were so many times in that fourth quarter last night they just did not get the job done. So I don't want to hear there's a built-in excuse. I think this team should go to the conference finals no matter what. As long as they play the way they played in games 2 and game 3, they could beat the Hawks. Frankly, they should have beat the Hawks last night. A team that shoots 36% from the field, they won the game. That's a little embarrassing to me. But you're right, Embiid is a gamer. Embiid is an absolute gamer. He's a warrior for going out there and trying to play through it. So, Rodney, here's one of the comments I liked. He says, I think the Sixers lost respect for the Hawks in game 3. In game 4, they were going through the motion until John Collins brought the energy through the roof, and the Sixers went completely flat. I think the John Collins thing was definitely the moment, that first dunk, that I was like, oh, man, this is not good. But the other thing I think was, I don't think they lost respect for the Hawks. I think the Sixers went into cruise control. And that's why they fell flat, because I think that they assumed they were going to win the game. You don't win the game through 3 quarters. You win it in 4 quarters. I think the Sixers tried to win the game in 3 quarters last night. And I think Korkmaz got exposed. I think that their defense fell flat. And I think they mismanaged the entire game, honestly. So that's kind of how I look at it, Rodney. I do think that moving forward, the Sixers need to have a conversation with themselves about, do they really want to win this series? You got to have a little want in life. You got to have a little, you got to have a little gumption. You got to have a little chutzpah, right? And if I'm the Sixers, I got to go out there and I got to look around and be like, hey, guys, do we win this series or not? Because if we do, let's go out and kick some rear. If not, we can go home. It's fine. But they got to make that decision as a team. One more texter that came in a little bit earlier as well at 609-403-0973. Texter says, $30 million a year in every other game, Ben Simmons turns into a ghost. Doesn't cut it without Embiid. Sixers are a 500 team at best without Embiid. 5 years in, what's going to change with Ben Simmons? Absolutely nothing. A couple things, Texter. First of all, listen, if you want to use the money thing, that's on you. But you can make an argument that more than half the NBA is overpaid in terms of what their talent level is. So Ben Simmons making $30 million, that's negligible point to me. It might be a point for you, but it's not a point to me. Everybody makes money. Now, if you want to tell me that Ben Simmons, he's not getting the job done, he's not stepping up in certain situations, I agree. He needs to be more assertive. And it's not because he was number 1 overall pick. It's not because he's a $30 million a year man. No, it's because he has the ability to do so. The Ben Simmons that scored over 40 points against Utah, if that Ben Simmons showed up last night, they win the game running away. But he didn't. So Ben Simmons needs to wake up. If that Ben Simmons shows up, they win Game 5. Catch you tomorrow.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff. Learn more, live better.
Lack of sleep doesn't just make us tired, it could also be making us gain weight. When we don't get enough sleep, we move less and our metabolism slows down. A slower metabolism